welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're stepping right into a story that it defies all logic. It's a puzzle so full of contradictions, it really forces you to question everything.
We're looking at the Jamison family disappearance. Back in October 2009, you have Bobby, who is 44, his wife Sherilyn, 40, and their little 6-year-old daughter, Madyson.
And they just vanished. They were out looking at a remote 40-acre plot of land near Red Oak, Oklahoma, and were never seen again.
Until 4 years later, November 2013, their skeletal remains are finally found.
But here's the thing. The discovery didn't solve anything. It raised so many more questions. They were found less than 3 miles from their truck, but because of the decomposition, the cause of death was and still is undetermined.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really try and synthesize the few clues they left behind. And these clues they're bizarre. They're deeply conflicting.
We're talking about strange surveillance footage, a huge amount of cash, and these claims of spiritual warfare.
Exactly. And all of it paints this incredibly dark picture. Were they victims of, some kind of ruthless foul play? Or did they just succumb to a terrifying internal psychological collapse?
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning of the investigation. The family's pickup truck.
Right. It was found just a few days after they went missing. Parked, locked, out in this remote part of Latimer County.
And the contents, what was left inside, it just makes no sense. Not for any logical scenario.
No, not at all. This wasn't a rushed abandonment. Inside the locked truck, police found everything. Their IDs, wallets, cell phones, a GPS, even their coats.
It really suggests they thought they were coming right back, doesn't it?
It's the only thing that makes sense. Whatever happened, it was sudden. They clearly intended to return to that truck.
And the most heartbreaking detail for me is the family dog, Maisie.
She was found inside that locked truck, severely malnourished after 9 days alone, but she was alive.
And from everything we know, the family adored that dog. The idea that they would just leave her to die while they ran away, it's impossible. It's just not credible.
And this brings us to the big financial ghost in the room. $32,000 in cash.
$32,000. Stuffed in a bank bag and hidden under the driver's seat.
And that single piece of evidence just immediately obliterates any theory of a simple robbery. I mean, who robs a family and leaves that kind of cash behind?
It's such a huge contradiction, because we know the Jamisons weren't wealthy. They were actually struggling.
Right. Bobby was on disability for chronic back pain from an old car accident. Sherilyn had bipolar disorder. They were not people who just carried around tens of thousands of dollars.
So if they were running away, why on earth would they leave their entire nest egg? Not to mention their IDs, phones, and their dog.
Exactly. But on the other hand, if they were meeting someone to, say, buy that land, why was the money hidden under the seat? You'd think they'd have it ready.
It points to a moment of just profound interruption
Or
panic.
Either the attacker was completely incompetent and somehow missed a fortune.
Which seems unlikely.
Very. Or the family, in some kind of shared delusion or crisis, they just abandoned everything material, the money included.
We also have to talk about what wasn't there.
Yes. There were 2 critical missing items. First, a brown briefcase that Sherilyn was seen packing on their home surveillance camera.
The second?
Sherilyn's .22 caliber handgun. She apparently kept it in the truck all the time for protection.
So the missing briefcase could suggest a transaction gone wrong. But the missing gun, that introduces the immediate possibility of violence.
Right. Premeditated or defensive, we just don't know.
Okay, so the truck is a scene of total confusion. But their behavior leading up to that day is, well, it's arguably even stranger.
We have to look at the psychological evidence. And that starts with the security camera footage from their own home the day they left.
This footage is so unsettling to watch, it's completely silent.
It shows Bobby and Sherilyn just methodically packing the truck, making trip after trip from the house. But they don't speak. They don't interact.
The sheriff at the time, Beauchamp, he described their movements as trance-like. He said sometimes they'd just stop and stare off into space.
Like they were zombies or something, just completely detached from reality and from each other.
Yeah, to be fair, some people point out the low frame rate of the video. It's only 2 frames per second, so it's hard to read expressions.
That's true, but it's not just about the expressions. It's the repetition, the sheer strangeness of their silent, uncoordinated movements. Well, it's the first real piece of evidence that points toward a shared psychological breakdown.
And that feeling, that sense of deep unease, it carries over directly to the last known image of their daughter.
The final photo of Madyson, It was found on Bobby's cell phone, taken somewhere near where the truck was abandoned. It's the last time anyone ever saw her alive.
Let's describe this photo. Madyson is 6 years old. She's looking away from the camera. Her arms are crossed really tightly across her chest.
Her shoulders are kind of hiked up, her hair is messy, her shirt looks like it might be on wrong. It's a very tense-looking picture.
Family members who saw it were adamant. They said Madyson loved the camera, she was a total ham. This was not her.
They interpreted that body language, the crossed arms, the shoulders, as classic signs of distress, of fear.
Which led to this chilling theory that maybe it wasn't one of her parents who took the photo. Maybe it was someone else, someone she was afraid of.
It creates this immediate conflict, you know? Is this just a normal, candid photo of a grumpy 6-year-old who's tired and having a tantrum?
Which is perfectly possible.
Perfectly possible. Or is this a picture of a child in genuine, immediate terror, captured moments before something awful happened? When you put it next to the parents' trance-like state, it feels much more like the latter.
So that really brings us to the question of why. Why were they so compromised? We have to move from the external clues to their internal world. And that world, in the months before they vanished, was apparently steeped in paranoia and spiritual warfare.
The claims were pretty extensive. Sherilyn was absolutely convinced their home was haunted by spirits of a family that had died there.
And Madyson had an imaginary friend named Emily, who Sherilyn believed was some kind of evil entity.
So they were living in this constant state of perceived supernatural threat.
And this fear was driving Bobby to do some very strange things. He actually went to his pastor, Gary Brandon.
Right, but not for counseling. He asked the pastor about buying special bullets.
Special bullets?
Yeah.
To shoot spirits that he claimed were living on the roof of their house.
He also confessed to the pastor that he'd been reading the Satanic Bible. He said he was trying to perform his own exorcism on the house.
And then there's the graffiti. On a storage container they were planning to move into, Sherilyn wrote, "Witches don't like there," spelled T-H-E-R-E, black cat killed.
Which apparently happened after their family cats had been poisoned, they thought, by neighbors. So you have this blend of real-world problems and these supernatural beliefs. The line was totally blurred for them.
This is where you have to consider something like a shared psychotic break, a folie à deux, where two people, usually a really codependent couple, they start sharing the same delusions.
Or you look at the more pragmatic explanation. That area of Oklahoma is known for meth activity. We know long-term meth use can trigger extreme paranoia, delusions, things that look a lot like schizophrenia.
Police never found any paraphernalia in the home, but they couldn't rule it out.
But here's the thing about the Jamisons that's so unique. Their paranoia about ghosts coexisted with very real, very tangible criminal threats.
The $32,000 for one. That doesn't feel like ghost money.
Not at all. And Bobby had recently reported a local meth lab to the police. Was the money part of that? A payment, a bribe? Who knows? Did someone retaliate?
And if they were so consumed with spiritual matters, why were they also in the middle of this very ugly, very real-world lawsuit against Bobby's own father?
That's the core paradox. Bob Dean Jamison. Bobby had a protective order out against him. He'd allegedly threatened the family and was known to be involved in crime, maybe meth.
And Bobby was suing him for money when they disappeared.
Now, police officially ruled the father out as a direct killer, but the motive for revenge, or maybe retribution from his criminal buddies, that was absolutely there.
And then you have even more extreme theories from Sherilyn's side of the family.
Her mother claimed they were on a religious cult's hit list, which sounds crazy.
It does.
But then an anonymous caller backed it up, suggesting Sherilyn was targeted by a white supremacist group because she had Native American ancestry.
And that supposedly went back to a fight where Sherilyn fired her gun, probably that missing .22, to scare off a racist handyman who had been living with them.
It's incredible. When you lay it all out, the Jamisons were simultaneously fighting ghosts, meth dealers, a violent relative, and maybe even a white supremacist cult. They were living at the intersection of pure fantasy and brutal reality.
And that conflict between the internal and the external, it all comes to a head when we look at the final scene.
Yeah.
The discovery of their remains.
4 years later, they're found in this extremely rugged, densely wooded area, about 2.7 miles from the truck.
And that distance, that's really significant. We have to remember Bobby's chronic back pain. It was debilitating.
For him to walk almost 3 miles over rough uphill terrain would have been excruciating, maybe impossible. It strongly suggests they were forced to walk that distance, coerced by someone else.
But the truly haunting detail is how they were found. The bodies of Bobby, Sherilyn, and little Madyson were all together
Lined up side by side with their faces down.
in execution.
That specific positioning is the single greatest piece of evidence for external foul play. It reads as a deliberate, calculated act. It's not how you'd find people who died from exposure, or even a chaotic murder-suicide. It's too neat, too ordered.
And we come back to the missing gun. A small hole was found in Bobby's skull, and at first they thought it could be a bullet hole.
But the decomposition was just too advanced to be certain. It was ruled inconclusive, so if it was an execution, the weapon was never found. If it was a murder-suicide, Sherilyn's gun was never recovered.
So here we are, suspended between these two impossible extremes.
On one side, you have a violent clinical criminal act, a drug hit, a family revenge killing, where for some reason the killers leave behind $32,000 and a live dog in a locked truck.
And on the other, you have this desperate collective act of murder-suicide or exposure driven by this overwhelming paranoia. But that's complicated by the missing weapon and that chilling execution-style arrangement.
It's the ultimate contradiction.
Okay, let's just try to unpack this. You have to hold both truths at once. You have all this powerful psychological evidence, the trance-like packing, the ghost hunting, that look on Madyson's face, and it all points to this catastrophic internal collapse.
But then, right up against that, you have the cold, hard physical facts. A locked truck full of money, a missing gun, and bodies arranged like an execution. Every single piece of evidence we've looked at seems to rule out one theory, only to reinforce the other one.
Leaving the whole case
Yeah.
completely unresolved. So what are we supposed to make of this?
I think what's so fascinating and so tragic here is the interplay between their mental state and the world they were in. They were living in a reality that was just dominated by fear and delusion.
The spirits, the hit lists.
Right, and that raises a really important question. If the family was experiencing a shared delusion, could that paranoia have ironically guided them straight into the path of the very real threats they claimed existed? Maybe in running from a ghost, they walked right into the arms of a killer.
That is maybe the darkest possible synthesis of this case. That their escape from the imaginary led them to something horribly real. Okay, so for you to think about after this deep dive, consider the one witness who survived. Maisie, the dog. She was locked inside that truck, surrounded by keys, phones, and all that cash. If that dog could tell us what happened in those final moments, would her story be about the quiet, methodical exit of a paranoid family enacting a tragic pact? Or would it be about the sudden, terrifying flight from a very real threat they recognized standing right outside their door?